Do miracles have a scientific explanation, or are they purely divine intervention? What if science, instead of refuting, actually revealed God's grandeur? Get ready to question what you know about faith and reason as we explore the supernatural coexistence of science and miracles. The narrative of divine creation, present in various religious traditions around the world, is often seen as a direct counterpoint to the scientific explanation of the universe. However, this apparent dichotomy can be illusory and limiting. Imagine that science is not a competitor to faith, but rather a powerful and sophisticated tool that allows us to unravel the immense complexity, intrinsic order, and inherent beauty of God's creation. From the colossal moment of the Big Bang, which gave rise to everything we know, to the majestic formation of spiral galaxies, the intricate dance of solar systems, and the fascinating evolution of life on Earth, every law of physics, chemistry, and biology can be interpreted not as a random occurrence, but as the tangible manifestation of the divine project. The natural laws that govern the cosmos and life in their minute details are not mere coincidences or the results of random processes. They are, in fact, the fundamental structure that allows for the existence, organization, and continuity of everything. The gravity that keeps planets in their precise orbits, the complex chemical reactions that sustain life in its various forms, and even the patterns of animal behavior, such as those observed and recorded in the relationship of Saint Francis of Assisi with animals, can be understood as direct reflections of the Creator's wisdom and providence. Science, in this sense, transcends its merely descriptive function and becomes the language that allows us to read the book of creation, revealing the profound intelligence and impeccable precision behind all complexity. Every new scientific discovery, from the revelation of the helical structure of DNA to the intricate functioning of the most delicate ecosystems, can deepen our admiration and reverence for the unparalleled power and precision with which God conceived and organized the universe. Thus, science does not deny God's existence, it actually unveils the magnificence of His works, allowing us to see the divine signature in every detail, no matter how small, of the natural world. The intricate web of life, the perfect symmetry of biological forms, and the harmonious functionality of biological systems, including communication between species like that which Saint Francis seemed to possess, can be understood as clear expressions of the ingenuity of a creator who established the laws governing the entire universe with unfathomable wisdom. The Bible, one of humanity's oldest and most revered books, is filled with accounts of miracles that, at first glance, defy logic, human comprehension, and the laws of nature as we know them. However, what if we explored the possibility that some of these extraordinary events, although undeniably miraculous in their essence, could have a plausible scientific explanation, without diminishing or denying the action of God? Consider, for example, the iconic crossing of the Red Sea by Moses and the people of Israel. While faith teaches us that it was a direct and supernatural divine intervention, modern science might suggest the occurrence of rare natural phenomena, such as strong and persistent winds that, in conjunction with exceptional low tides, could have exposed shallow sections of the seabed, or even the temporary formation of a narrow water channel. Another striking example is the numerous cures of lepers performed by Jesus, described in the Gospels. Today, medicine and molecular biology understand the possibility of spontaneous remission of some diseases, or even the effectiveness of natural treatments and substances that were unknown at the time, but which could have been catalyzed by Jesus' presence and word. In the specific case of Saint Francis of Assisi and his remarkable and almost legendary connection with animals, we can legitimately question whether this interaction was purely spiritual and mystical or if he possessed a keen intuition and a rare sensitivity to the biophysics of animal behavior. Is it possible that he understood and utilized nonverbal cues, vocalization patterns, and animal instincts in a way that others could not perceive or replicate? Perhaps Saint Francis's predation on the captured hare, freeing it, or the famous sermon to the birds, could have been perceived by the animals in a unique way, triggering specific behavioral responses, profoundly influenced by his aura of calm, peace, and non-threat. It is crucial to understand that, even with scientific explanations that offer plausibility for the how of these events, the action of God remains central and irrefutable. The coincidence of a natural phenomenon occurring at the precise and necessary moment for a miracle, or the extraordinary ability of a person like Jesus to catalyze healing, or of Saint Francis of Assisi to establish such a profound communication with nature, still points to a divine orchestration. Science, in its essence, can describe the how something happened in terms of mechanisms and processes, but it cannot explain the why it happened at that specific moment, with that divine purpose, and with that spiritual impact. The beauty and depth of this perspective lie in recognizing that God can operate both through the extraordinary, which transcends our immediate understanding, and through the natural order and the laws that He Himself established in creation. The natural laws that govern our universe, from the subatomic scale to cosmic vastness, are not mere random or arbitrary rules. They are, in fact, the sublime expression of order, precision, harmony, and the unquestionable power of God. The gravity that keeps planets in their perfect and predictable orbits, the laws of thermodynamics that govern energy and matter in all systems, and even the intricate laws of biology that allow life to flourish in its most diverse and surprising forms, all reflect an intelligent design and an unprecedented divine engineering. Science, with its rigorous methodologies and its incessant pursuit of knowledge, allows us to decipher these laws, understand their underlying mechanisms, and, ultimately, marvel at the divine complexity and ingenuity behind everything that exists. In the context of miracles, this perspective is fundamental and illuminating. Science, while being an extraordinarily useful tool for explaining certain aspects of a phenomenon, does not in the least diminish divine control. On the contrary, it can even enhance God's ability to operate both within, and sometimes beyond, His own established laws. Consider again the relationship of Saint Francis of Assisi with animals. If we could analyze his interactions with the most advanced tools of animal behavior biophysics, perhaps we would find rational explanations for the unusual calm of wild wolves in his presence or the absorbed attention of birds during his sermons. Perhaps Saint Francis possessed a rare sensitivity to nonverbal cues, subtle pheromones, or specific sound frequencies that animals emit, creating a bridge of communication that went far beyond the ordinary. This keen sensitivity, in turn, could be seen not as a purely human ability, but as a divine gift, an extension of the human capacity to interact harmoniously with all creation. Even if science could map the exact neurochemistry behind an animal's calm in Saint Francis's presence, or the precise sound waves he emitted that resonated with the animals, this would in no way invalidate divine intervention. On the contrary, it would only give us a deeper glimpse into how God can use the very mechanisms and laws of nature to fulfill His grand purposes. Science explores the how of an event, detailing the processes and immediate causes, but the deeper why and the divine orchestration of the event remain within the realm of faith and transcendence. God's power is manifested not only in what transcends natural laws, but also in the way these laws are perfectly established and, at times, influenced or directed to fulfill His sovereign will. Among the many fascinating and inspiring accounts of the life of Saint Francis of Assisi, the famous Sermon to the Birds stands out as one of the most emblematic, mysterious, and poetic. The narrative, passed down through the centuries, tells that Francis, walking through a field in the Umbrian region, encountered a large number of birds of various species and, moved by his deep love for creation, began to preach to them fervently. According to the account, the birds, in turn, remained attentive, without flying away, as if they understood his words and were captivated by his message. How can we approach this unique miracle from a perspective that harmonizes faith and science, without diminishing the grandeur of either side? From a purely scientific point of view, the biophysics of animal behavior can offer some intriguing and plausible hypotheses. Birds, like many other wild animals, are extremely sensitive to nonverbal cues, such as a person's body posture, tone of voice, and even the intention or energy conveyed by a human being. It is perfectly possible that Saint Francis, with his profound inner peace, genuine humility, and unconditional love for all creation, emitted such a powerful and unique aura of non-threat, such a serene energy that it calmed the birds and made them feel completely safe and comfortable in his presence. Modern studies on animal communication and ethology show that some species can, in fact, interpret human body language and vocalizations in surprisingly complex ways, reacting to them in unexpected forms. Saint Francis's voice, although not in a language understood by birds in the human sense, could have been perceived as calm, melodic, and non-aggressive, which, combined with his serene posture and gentle gaze, would encourage them to remain still and attentive. Furthermore, the repetition and rhythm of his words, or even certain specific sound frequencies emitted by his voice, could have had an almost hypnotic or deeply calming effect on the birds. However, regardless of any biophysical explanation we might venture based on our current knowledge, the action of God and divine intervention remain the core and essence of the miracle. Science can try to decipher the mechanisms involved, the bird's predisposition to react to certain stimuli, St. Francis's innate ability to emit these stimuli so effectively, but it cannot, in its entirety, explain the perfect synchronicity of the event, nor the divine intention behind such a singular and moving interaction. The beauty and depth of the Sermon to the Birds lie precisely in the idea that God, through his humble servant, St. Francis, manifested his glory and his presence in the harmony and communion between man and nature. St. Francis's ability to inspire such reverence and attention in animals, whether by means that science may one day categorize and explain, or by a purely supernatural and mystical gift, continues to be a powerful testament to divine power and the extraordinary connection that some individuals can have with God's creation, transcending the barriers of what we consider ordinary. The miracles of the New Testament, such as the extraordinary healings of the sick, the astonishing multiplication of loaves and fishes to feed thousands of people, and, most notably, the resurrection itself, are unshakable pillars of the Christian faith, demonstrating the unparalleled power and divine authority of Jesus Christ. Although modern science, with its advances and investigations, may suggest possible explanations for some of the phenomena involved, the essence of these miracles unquestionably lies in direct divine intervention and the manifest presence of God. However, we can and should explore how faith and science can coexist in a harmony that not only does not contradict them, but, in fact, deeply enriches our understanding of the divine. Let's consider, for example, Jesus' healings. Modern medicine, through fields like neuroscience and psychosomatics, recognizes the powerful placebo effect and the incredible capacity of the human mind to influence the body, triggering internal healing processes. Patients with psychosomatic illnesses or even real and chronic physical conditions can experience significant, and sometimes dramatic, improvements when subjected to treatments that activate their beliefs and hopes. Is it possible that Jesus' charismatic presence, his intrinsic authority, his powerful word, and the unwavering faith of those who sought him created an environment where these physiological and psychosomatic responses were amplified to an extreme, resulting in seemingly instantaneous and complete cures? Science could, perhaps, investigate the neurological and chemical mechanisms involved in these responses, but it could never explain the primary source of that divine authority, that supernatural faith, and that unconditional love that Jesus conveyed. In the context of Saint Francis of Assisi, his remarkable ability to communicate with animals can be viewed through the same lens. Although the biophysics of animal behavior can study how animals react to certain stimuli, vocalizations, and non-threatening postures, Francis's consistent ability to calm and interact with wild creatures in such a profound and almost empathetic way suggests something far beyond mere technique or behavioral knowledge. Perhaps it was a manifestation of the gift of tongues, in a broader, mystical sense, a spiritual connection that transcended the barrier of species, a reflection of God's dominion over all his creation and over the human capacity to harmonize with it. In all these examples, whether from the New Testament or the life of Saint Francis, even if science can propose mechanisms for how something happened, the action of God is and remains the fundamental why. The true harmony between faith and science lies in recognizing that God can operate both through what we consider natural, the laws and processes he himself established, and through the supernatural, that which transcends our current understanding. Science, in its relentless pursuit, helps us understand the complex machinery of the universe, but faith connects us to the designer and operator of that machine. God's presence is not diminished or devalued by a scientific explanation. It is, in fact, often magnified, by showing us the depth, complexity, and ingenuity of his work, which can be unveiled and appreciated through both reason and faith. Throughout this investigative journey, we have explored the tenuous, yet fascinating, line that separates and, paradoxically, unites miracles and science, seeking to harmonize faith with reason from a broader perspective. However, it is crucial to conclude with the profound reflection that science, no matter how advanced, insightful, and brilliant in its discoveries, will never be able to fully comprehend the divine mysteries. The human mind, with its analytical tools, rigorous methodologies, and observational instruments, operates intrinsically within a system of laws and phenomena that, while extraordinarily effective for unraveling the workings of the material universe, possesses inherent and insurmountable limitations. God, by his very essential nature, transcends our comprehension and our categories of thought. He is the creator of the laws that science attempts to unravel and decode, and, therefore, he is not confined by them. Miracles, whether they are the instantaneous healing of a deemed incurable disease, the supernatural multiplication of food to feed multitudes, or the singular and almost telepathic communication of Saint Francis of Assisi with wild animals, represent a glimpse of the divine power that operates beyond our expectations, our logical explanations, and our cognitive limitations. Science may offer us hypotheses about the biophysics of animal behavior that allowed Saint Francis to interact so deeply and peacefully with wolves and birds, but it cannot, in its entirety, explain the essence of that pure love, that divine grace, and that spiritual connection that emanated from him and transformed the environment around him. This gap, this frontier that science cannot cross, is not an intrinsic flaw in science, but rather a humble and necessary acknowledgement of the unfathomable greatness of God. Science starts from a limited human perspective, seeking patterns, causes, and effects in the material and measurable world. God, on the other hand, is infinite in his essence, timeless in his existence, and omniscient in his wisdom. He is the primary source of all existence, and his purposes, his plans, and his methods frequently transcend our capacity for discernment and comprehension. Therefore, while science continues its noble quest to unravel the how of the universe, faith invites us to accept the divine whys, to surrender to that which is beyond our reason and our capacity for analysis. Mystery does not diminish the figure of God. On the contrary, it reaffirms his absolute sovereignty and reminds us of the humility necessary to approach the sacred. The greatest wisdom, perhaps, lies precisely in recognizing that true understanding is not in explaining everything, but in accepting that not everything needs to be explained to be real, and that faith is the bridge that leads us to the deepest mysteries that science, by its very nature, will never fully grasp. We've explored how miracles and science can coexist, revealing that reason can sometimes illuminate divine manifestation. But even with the most plausible explanations, the fascination remains. Are miracles merely natural phenomena orchestrated by God, or interventions that defy the very laws he created? The mystery of divinity, transcending our comprehension, invites continuous reflection. After all, where science ends, does faith merely begin to unveil the infinite?